The banner came out on Thursday, this video is supposed to be up on Sunday, I have 3 days to get this done. I can make it work. Okay, so new banner, new characters, blah blah blah, we've been here before. Click here to see the video about the first banner, now let's get to everyone's current obsession, Amduscias. Reminder, I'm only doing 4 stars and up because just look at this video's timeline. Can you imagine how long it'd be if I did both units? Anyways, Amduscias is a wood type 5-star that I'm feeling completely normal about. His first skill is Sound Shop from Another World, and it goes as follows. At phase start, he gains Vigor and Glint, also removing up to 1000 HP from enemies in a 3-square cone after attacking at 80%. And if he's stationary, applies Vigor and gives up to 200 HP to units 1 square around himself. The second skill is Junior Idol. He gets Charm Weakening to himself, which is kind of overkill, isn't it? If any unit gets charmed, they're already fucked. Having a specific weakness to that is like icing on the poo cake. He also has a 100% chance for Guts at phase start and gets up to 6 CP if he's buffed or debuffed at 90%. His third skill is Hardworking Unicorn. Listen, Life Wonders, if you wanted to call him a unicorn, how about you actually make him a horse instead of a dog? On miss, he loses 300 HP while getting arousal to himself at 100%, so I guess he's a masochist. He also gets Tenacity before being hit, just in case you thought he wasn't a bottom. The final skill is Future Top Star, although it should be named Future Bottom Star. He gets Taunt Strengthening and Taunt Healing when appearing, Weapon Change to Magic at 100% and Ardor at 90% when moving, and finally an advantage against Dazzle. Overall, Amduscias is a unit that I think is just shy of earning 5 stars. He's a blow type unit, so his damage is limited, but he does kind of get around it by dealing 1000 damage if he attacks in a cone. However, the proc for that is only 80%, and while 1000 damage is good, it isn't great. He also gets some great buffs like Vigor, Glint, Tenacity, Ardor, and Guts, but all of that helps his survivability. Not that survivability is a bad thing, but it doesn't help too much when his damage is frankly really low. He's just a really sturdy punching bag. He's really good for those boss and survival stages, but outside of that, you're gonna want to go for someone who can actually just kill the enemy. As a unit, he gets 4 stars. Now that we're done with Amduscias as a unit, let's get into him as a character. His 3-star research file is his backstory, basically detailing how Amduscias, while popular on the internet, didn't show his face. Like me. He made Vocaloids and other stuff like that, but upon meeting his first fan, he gained the confidence to show himself. With the help of a certain senpai, hint hint, it's Barong, he's determined to become the top idol. His 5-star research file mostly elaborates on stuff we already know about him. He's a starting idol, although it doesn't seem like he's quite a member of the entertainers yet. It's only when certain conditions are met can he actually join, and thus will he learn about the dark side of the entertainment industry. If Amduscias really wants that new role, then Christine is going to have to ask that he kindly get on his knees. The most interesting part of the research file is that we learn what his sacred artifact is, his eye. The research file doesn't do too good of a job actually explaining what it does, but I'll give it my best attempt. Basically, he's able to draw attention to any particular thing the stars in his eyes shine on, be that himself or others. It also mentions that his guildmaster, Oscar, thinks Amduscias taking to the stage without a mask is reckless. This probably points to some greater theme about Chapter 14, but I'll cover that when we get to Oscar. Oh, and one final thing, it does mention how he has 3 stage names. His old one, P, from before becoming an idol, the Great which he uses currently, and Dussie? What's next? Lifewinner is going to introduce a new woman and nickname her MILF? Jeez. As for who Amduscias is based on, he's based on a similarly named demon from the Ars Goetia, a unicorn who is said to have immense musical knowledge and be responsible for the cacophonous music that rings throughout hell. He was also said to have control over trees, explaining why he's wood type. And now we have Gurangatch. Never expected Housamo to release two Scalies back to back. He's water attribute and gun type, and his 4 stars first skill is Gigantic Crocodile with Scales, which yeah, he sure as fuck is. When appearing, he gets Guts and Immobility Strengthening, and if he gets hit with less than 50% HP, he applies Immobility to himself. He also applies this flat damage after being hit buff to allies in one square at 90%. His second skill is either named Damage Remover or Slasher. At phase start, he makes every enemy's weapon type all for 3 turns. When attacking, he removes up to 20 CP and up to 1200 HP from hit enemies at 90%. And if he gets hit, he removes up to 6 CP and up to 2000 HP from enemies at 70%. The third skill is Diving Buddy, which yeah, I'd like to go diving with him, you know what I'm saying? Some YouTubers wouldn't make the same cutaway gag in the same video. Unfortunately for all of y'all, I am not those YouTubers. He gets increased vertical movement, applies skill lock at 60% when attacking, and is immune to bind. The final skill is Back Wounded Wanderer. At phase start, he applies null debuff to himself and directly adjacent allies, and after attacking, he applies combo 2-hit units at 80%. And if he gets hit when his HP is less than half full, he removes up to 1500 HP from the enemies that hit him and those to the left and right. As a unit, Gurangatch is surprisingly good. Him turning every enemy into all weapons sounds much worse than it is, since all has the lowest damage modifier of any attack type. It also means you can suddenly make teams built around those unhit debuffs, ensuring that they have a wide spread. It's definitely unusual, but with a bit of thinking, you can make it work. 4 stars. Gurangatch's research files are actually pretty important because they contain 2 important pieces of lore. The first is finally clearing up what's going on with the Oceanic Realm. Rather than being a singular world like all the rest, it's a singular system with smaller subworlds in it. What the fuck does any of that actually mean? I don't know, but it's what the research file says. And finally, we get information about the Oceanic Realm's exile, the Rainbow Serpent, who is likely Yurlinger. Apparently, the fate that powers Gurangatch is the same that powered Yurlinger, but I am forced to say, once again, whatever the fuck that means, cause we do not know. Sadly, that's all the lore we get for now, but the rest is very standard research file stuff. Regarding his backstory, we don't know what happened specifically, but Gurangatch wound up getting severely hurt, ending up with a massive scar on his back. You can just barely see it over his shoulder in the 4-star art. He somehow ended up in Tokyo and was originally a Coast Guard but got transferred to the Fire Brigade, so now he works alongside Akiha in Ulaanbaatar. Whatever gave him that scar on his back also left him with some mental scars, seeing as how, despite appearances, Gurangatch is a little bitch. Prone to just leaping into the ground and just swimming away, not only when things get tough, but when he feels someone else's eyes on him. I'm just gonna put him right here in the poor little meow meow bucket. His sacred artifact is Haki, a literal manifestation of what. His sacred artifact has the power to remove anything in his way so he can swim through solid surfaces as if they were water. Not even world reps could easily catch him because he could very easily go through a person. He'd probably be very dangerous if he wasn't such a soft boy. It probably ties back into the greater themes of Chapter 14, but that's something I'll talk about after we've covered all the units. As for Gurangatch, he's based on an Australian Aboriginal myth about Gurangatch and Miragong. Basically, Gurangatch was a fish-snake thing and Miragong wanted to eat him, so they chased each other, creating rivers and caves. Miragong got very close to catching Gurangatch, but only ended up tearing off flesh from his back. This is a very abridged version of the story, and I recommend you read it for yourself because it's actually quite nice. Gurangatch is skittish, just like how he was in the story, as does he have a torn back. Now we just have to wait for Life Runners to add Miragong to the game in 10 bajillion years. Real quick, remember to like and subscribe, and if you want to support me, donate to my Ko-fi and Patreon, where you get access to early videos and my Patreon-only Discord server. Also, I should be live streaming Gunfire Reborn tomorrow. Now let's get back to the video. The next character we're covering is Yuma, the newly revealed Guildmaster of the Ueno Beast Tamers. His 4-star is Water Attribute and Long/Type, and its skills are as follows. His first skill is Mixed Person, which is actually a double pun based on the fact that yes, Yuma is part transient or something, but like the other Guildmasters, he's likely not entirely Japanese. He gets Possession Strengthening when appearing, Tenacity when moving on turns 1, 2, and 3, and Null Debuff at 80% when he moves on turns 4, 5, and so on. His second skill is Gene Slurper, which is just the weirdest way anything has ever been described. When appearing, he gets 50 to 100 CP to himself. When attacking, he loses up to 200 HP, but steals HP up to the damage he dealt at 80% and applies Confusion at 90%. His third skill is Unidentified Creature. He deals 100 times damage to enemies with evasion and has Charm and Dazzle resistance. His final skill is named Beast and Tamer. He gets Gut Strengthening at phase start, gives Tenacity Strengthening to himself and every ally on the board, and if he has most of his HP, he gives Limit to allies 2 squares on his left and right at 90% at turn start. As a unit, Yuma is actually really good. He's one of those cases when a 4-star is genuinely better than some 5-stars. Tenacity is a super common buff, so the fact that Yuma gives them Tenacity Strengthening, which triples their attack, is honestly kind of crazy. For Yuma himself, it means that his damage will always be good despite being long slash. He also has good survivability thanks to getting Guts, Tenacity, and HP Theft. Overall, as a unit, Yuma gets 5 stars. Now let's get into Yuma as a character. Starting with this 5-star research file because this will answer the biggest question everyone has about him. His sacred artifact is unknown. It might be a disease or something, not even the scientist at Ueno can tell. The way it works is that Yuma can eat transient hair, gross, and turn into a beast man. Although, because if he throws up the hair, he returns back to being human, no one is quite sure what to call him. He's not quite human, he's not quite Therian, so he's a UMA, Unidentified Mysterious Animal, a cryptid. Personality-wise, as a Gemini would put it, he's a little quirky. Just to begin, he's the one that made that cage in his 4-star art. It's a comfort thing alongside pulling up his hood. By the way, that hood fur is made of shed transient fur, which is just boundaries, dude. Boundaries. He also just generally lurks about the Ueno dorm, waiting to snatch up any fallen fur he can find. It's not all bad though, he does have at least one person who does bother to look out for him. Also, to follow up a joke in my last video, it's apparently not fleshy or skinny, it's humany. It's also implied that Yuma was Amduscias' first fan, and from the way Life Wonders is setting up the idol, I expect a heel face turn. One where Yuma manages to convince Amduscias to leave the entertainers or something. The last thing of note that I'll mention is his charge skill. San Salvador Lugaru. San Salvador literally means Saint Salvador, so we can assume that Yuma is part Central American. The Lugaru part is interesting because it's French for werewolf, so maybe he also has some French blood in him. The research file does mention that Yuma is an alias, so there's probably some deeper reference that we won't understand until chapter 14 releases. Future Fury here, but I just realized while editing this video that Yuma is a pun on UMA. Yuma. U-M-A. Yuma. The final character we're covering is the one, the only Hatsune Miku. Ugh, do I have to get off the copium? Fine, we're actually covering the Guildmaster of the Entertainers, Oscar, who totally should have been Hatsune Miku. His 5-star is Infernal Attribute and Nun type, and its first skill is Hedonistic Playwright. If stationary, he applies weapon weakness to all to every enemy on the board. He also happens to give himself all weapon type if he's stationary. And if his HP is full, he applies Ardor to allies in one square at 90%. The second skill is Veil Wearer. He applies damage reversal to himself at 90% and adjacent allies on turns 2, 3, and 4 at 30%. And he applies damage reversal to adjacent allies at 80% if he moves, and also removes up to 12 CP from hit units at 90%. The third skill is Final Act Actor. He removes bind and double lock at 100%. And after attacking, he gets up to 10 CP to himself, and at phase start, he gets glint, both at 90%. And if stationary, he always moves up to 1000 HP from every enemy on the board. Finally is Manager of Yurakucho. After moving, he has a 90% chance to give Spirit to himself and allies in one square. If stationary, he applies crit to himself and allies on his left and right at 100%. He then applies drain to units that hit him at 80% and has increased horizontal and vertical movement. As a unit, Oscar is weird. The best strategy relies on him being stationary, that way he can get all weapon type and crit so his damage stays good. However, rather than support this stationary playstyle or even give him another option, everything else is just kind of there. The damage reversal is neat, but he doesn't really have any way to make use of it on his own. Overall, I give him a tentative 4 stars, maybe 5 if someone can fill me in to whatever strategy I'm missing. Moving on, like most other guildmasters, Oscar isn't entirely Japanese, being half Irish. His sacred artifact is that cane he's using, but also kind of his mask. Basically, the mask is a VR headset and the cane is his pen, which he can use to temporarily assign new roles to people. That's actually kind of incredibly broken since it bypasses one of the fundamental things about the game. Like, the protagonist is physically unable to beat a world rep because of their role, but if Oscar gave them a different one, that suddenly would change. This also explains why people like Boogeyman and Gurangatch are part of the entertainers. As urban legends rather than proper myths, both Gurangatch and Boogeyman are incredibly unstable. However, Oscar's ability gives him a way to stabilize their existence, although the research file notes that they all feel varying ways about the power he has over them. What we're told about his sacred artifact is honestly either super vague or super weird. Probably both, so I'm just moving on to everything else. He's a playwright and leader of the entertainers, but more importantly, he seems to embody their hedonistic philosophy. He lives solely for moment-to-moment entertainment as a way to hide from one's problems. That's one of the reasons he's so insistent on wearing the mask, because the anonymity it provides is sort of like protection, allowing one to speak their true feelings. It's why how in Dusty's research file it states that the entertainer's guildmaster, i.e. Oscar, thinks Amduscias showing his true self on stage is reckless. It also mentions that the name of his sacred artifact is hidden within the app. Briefly, it also mentions the giant lumberjack's pet calf, which is clearly a reference to Babe Bunyan. Consider that Babe is a reference to the indigenous white ox myth and Oscar's ability to deal out different roles, and maybe there's more going on with the two than we think. The final thing his research file mentions is that when things get serious, he takes off the bottom half of his mask. I'm not sure what bottom half they're talking about, but that's something to look forward to in the main quest, I guess. Moving on from that, Oscar is based on Oscar Wilde, an Anglo-Irish playwright who was very famous in London. Sadly, a libel suit against his wife's father ended up exposing his homosexual relationships, which earned him a place in jail. Thankfully, he didn't die there, but when he got out of jail, he published one final book before leaving London forever. Overall, these are some good units that build upon what I think will be Chapter 14's main theme. That theme being very similar to Chapter 12, that being self-confidence. Amduscias needing to find the courage to take the stage, Yuma and Gurangatch finding the courage to stand up for themselves, and Oscar being the shadow. I don't mean shadow in like the Housamo sense, but in the literary sense, Oscar being an example of what it means to fail the character arc all the other characters are on. I could go on, but it's 6 AM and this video is supposed to go up in like 6 hours, so I'm just gonna end it here. Of course, we still have to do our Patreon shoutouts. For our 3 stars, we have special thanks to 87 Werehog, Deku, Zara Chow, Choron, Garyon Lefay, Dragon King Yara, Unknown RC, and Kayun. For 4 stars, we have Miki Moon, the Kame Senni. For our Super D2per special 5-star shoutouts, we have first Vanilla Flower, the Monster Smash. Then Poor Mage, the Devil on the 3rd floor. Next, Sky King 64, the Monkey in the City. And finally, Mahagasaur, the strongest under the heavens. Thank you for watching. Do be sure to like and subscribe and check out my Ko-fi and Patreon. As always, this is Rose Fury signing out.